I'll never forget the sound of her laugh. Or the echo. Or how every face in that room turned to me like I was the punchline of a bad joke. It was just a school performance, nothing fancy, nothing major. But to me, it was everything. I had prepared for days, rehearsing in secret inside the bathroom, recording my voice on an old phone with a cracked screen, singing softly so no one would hear. And still, when I stepped on stage, shaking from head to toe, the only thing my mom managed to do was laugh. It wasn't a quiet laugh. It wasn't a stifled chuckle. It was loud, disrespectful, cruel, like watching her own daughter chase a dream was some kind of comedy. I paused for half a second, almost choked on the lyrics, but I kept going, because if pain taught me anything, it was how to perform like nothing hurts. The applause at the end was polite, nothing warm, nothing real. But the damage had already been done. I stepped off that stage wishing I could disappear. And when I locked eyes with her in the crowd, she looked away. Since I was little, my mom made it her mission to snuff out any spark I had. Don't sing so loud, you'll wake the neighbors. That's for people who live in fairy tales. You think anyone's gonna listen to you? Just everyday phrases, tossed out between reheated coffee and soap operas. Still I dreamed. I sang quietly in the backyard, in the shower, sometimes just in my head, like my soul was rehearsing for an invisible crowd that, maybe one day, would actually listen. On the ride home, I sat in the back seat. No one said a word, just the radio playing low and the cheap cologne of my stepdad filling the car. She didn't glance at me through the mirror, didn't ask if I was okay, just said the pie at the event tasted bland. Like nothing had happened, like she hadn't shattered me in front of the entire school. I stared out the window, swallowed back tears, and made a promise to myself that was the last time she'd ever have the power to humiliate me in public. That night, I stayed up late with my face buried in the pillow. I didn't cry. I was numb. You know when pain is so big, so loud, you just go silent. I picked up my notebook, the one where I write lyrics and random thoughts, and wrote one line across the top of a page. One day, you'll regret that laugh. I closed the notebook and fell asleep holding it. Something shifted in me that night. It wasn't about singing well anymore. It was about being heard, about freeing myself from the shame she tried to plant in me. At school, no one mentioned what had happened, but their eyes did. Some looked at me with pity, others with amusement, until the art teacher pulled me aside in the hallway. She said a special guest had seen my performance and asked for my name. I thought it was a joke, but she handed me a plain card, just a name and a phone number. "He wants to hear you again," she said. My hand started sweating. My heart nearly burst out of my chest, but I told no one, not even my best friend, especially not my mom. The next day at lunch, she casually mentioned she was heading to the salon, asked if I wanted to straighten my hair, like that would magically fix my life. I said no. She rolled her eyes and replied, "You should try looking decent for once. Maybe then people would take you seriously." It stung, like it always did, but something in me had shifted. I wasn't soaking it all in like a sponge anymore. Her words bounced off me, maybe because I knew something she didn't. Someone important believed in me. After school, I went to the little park behind campus, took out the card, and dialed the number with shaking fingers. "Hello." The voice was firm, adult, professional. I introduced myself. He remembered me, said he felt something in my voice, that it wasn't perfect, but it was real, authentic, and in his world, that meant more than technical skill. We scheduled an audition for Saturday. I hung up and just sat there on the park bench, breathing, trying to believe it was real. On the way back home, she asked where I'd been. I made up something random. She didn't really listen. She was too busy complaining about a chipped nail. That night, I overheard her on the phone with a friend. "Letícia still thinks she's going to be a singer. Poor thing." And she laughed. Again. Laughed like my hope was a joke. I didn't react. I just wrote in my notebook. She laughed. But on Saturday, it'll be my turn to leave someone speechless. Saturday came, and the sky was gray like even the weather was asking me, "Are you sure?" I was. even with my stomach in knots and my hands sweating inside my coat pocket. I took the bus alone, earbuds in, listening to the same playlist as always, songs that reminded me I wasn't truly alone, even if no one around me believed in me. On the way, I kept flipping the producer's card between my fingers. I'd memorized his name, Fabio Costa. Never heard of him before, but there was something in the way he looked at me at school, something different. I got to the studio 20 minutes early. From the outside, it looked like just another house. But inside, it felt like another universe. Soundproofed walls, expensive microphones, cables, control panels, stuff I'd only seen in YouTube videos. My body froze in the doorway. A guy in a cap and black t-shirt greeted me. "You must be Letícia, right? Fabio's waiting for you." I just nodded. Part of me wanted to run, but I stayed, took a deep breath, and walked toward the room. Fabio smiled as I stepped in. "Relax," he said. "It's just you and your truth here." He told me it was just a test recording. Didn't have to be perfect. "Sing from the heart," he said. I closed my eyes and picked the song that always saved me, the one I whispered to myself at night when my mom yelled at my stepdad from the other room. The lyrics were simple, but each word came out soaked in pain. My throat burned. My soul trembled. When I finished, there was silence. Not like at school, where silence judges. This silence had listened. Fabio looked at me for a moment and said, "You sing with scars. That's rare." I left the studio with a mix of relief and fear. He said he'd get in touch, that he wanted to share the recording with a colleague who worked on movie soundtracks. All I could think about was one thing: my mom had no idea, and maybe she never would. I took the bus back home, holding my smile like a fragile secret. When I walked in, she was lying on the couch watching celebrity gossip. Didn't even notice I'd been gone. Just asked if I'd stopped by the bakery. I shook my head. "You're always off in La La Land," she muttered. "You're gonna end up disappointed." That night I wrote in my notebook, "The pain she gives me is the ink I use to write." It wasn't poetry. It was survival. Slowly, I started to realize that singing wasn't just a dream, it was a shelter. A place where I could still feel whole. Where I didn't need permission to exist. I started singing more in my room, behind a locked door. Recorded new voice memos. Listened to the studio track 1,000 times. I knew there was still a lot to improve, but for the first time, I was ready to try, even if it meant doing it alone, even if I was scared. A few days later, Fabio messaged me, said he wanted me to come back next Saturday, that someone else wanted to hear me. When I read that, my chest felt like it might burst. But then the panic kicked in. What if she found out? I told her I was going to study at Amanda's house. She's a friend from school. "Study? For what?" she scoffed. "You think you're a singer now?" And laughed. Again. But this time, her laugh didn't cut like it used to. It was just noise. I'd learned to tune out the world when the world inside me was speaking louder. That second Saturday, the woman who came to hear me at the studio was named Duda. Young, blue hair covered in tattoos. But her eyes serious, intense, sharp. She listened to me sing, then asked me to do it again, but this time, to change how I delivered it. I did. She scribbled something on a notepad. Then she looked up and said, "There's something here, raw but strong. I see you." Those words broke me. I see you. It was all I'd ever begged for, without even knowing how to ask. I left and cried at the bus stop, not from sadness, but from release. For the first time, someone saw me beyond my mother's laughter. In the days that followed, my mom noticed something. She started asking more questions. "Where are you going? Why are you acting so secretive?" I told her whatever came to mind. Because if I told her the truth, she'd just laugh again. Or worse, try to shut it all down. And I wasn't going to let that happen. I was protecting my process, my chance, my light. And if she never understood, that was fine. Some mothers don't know how to love what they can't control. I had stopped asking for approval. My mission now was to grow in silence. And when the world finally heard my voice, she would too, even if it was already too late. The invite came on a Tuesday afternoon, right in the middle of math class. A buzz in my pocket, recording scheduled. Sunday, 9 a.m. Studio 7, downtown. I almost dropped my phone. My heart was racing like I had just run a marathon. Sunday, my name. A real recording. It felt unreal. And just like that, anxiety hit. How was I going to leave the house without her noticing? What if everything went wrong? What if I wasn't good enough? I spent the next few days rehearsing in whispers, my face buried in a pillow to muffle the sound. I recorded versions, changed keys, practiced lines between classes. When no one was looking, I practiced posture, hand movements, eye closings, everything I imagined a real singer would do. By Friday night, she started noticing. "You've been acting weird," she said. "Up to something." I shook my head with a blank smile. She didn't press, but I could feel her eyes lingering longer. I knew one wrong move could end it all before it even started. Sunday hit me like a punch. I woke up before the alarm, packed everything into my bag. The lyrics, a water bottle, my notebook, and a lipstick I'd taken from my mom's dresser. She was still asleep. I crept through the hallway like a fugitive. When I stepped outside, the early morning air wrapped around me like a secret. I took 2 buses to get downtown. When I arrived at the building, Studio 7, it had mirrored windows, a sleek lobby, people with headphones slung around their necks. I felt invisible, but I was there. Ready or not, Fabio greeted me with a quiet smile. "Nervous? A lot. Good sign." We walked through long hallways until we reached a room with wood and glass walls. Duda was already inside, fiddling with the soundboard. "Letícia, this is your home today." That line hit me. My home. I'd never had a place that felt peaceful. Maybe this would be the first. I put the headphones on. The beat started, and when I opened my mouth to sing, something inside me shook. Not from fear, from truth. It felt like I was performing for myself, for the very first time. I sang like no one would ever hear it. Like it was just me, God, and every version of the girl I'd spent years trying to bury. When the final note left my lips, I stood still. The silence didn't scare me anymore. Fabio tapped the desk, gently. "That's it," he said. Duda, who rarely gave compliments, just murmured, "There's soul in that." That meant more than 1,000 claps. I wanted to tell someone, but there was no one. So I just wrote in my notebook. Today, my soul turned into sound. On the way back home, the sky turned dark fast. When I walked in, she was in the kitchen. Gave me a once-over. "Where were you?" "Studying." "Wearing lipstick?" I didn't answer. Just headed straight to my room, heart pounding. She knew. Maybe not exactly what I'd done, but something inside me was shifting. And it made her uncomfortable. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to please her. I was too busy trying to find myself. That night, I heard her arguing with my stepdad. "That girl's hiding something. Always walking around like she's about to blow." She wasn't wrong. I was about to blow. Not from anger, but from truth. From talent I'd held in for too long. From dreams that finally found cracks to breathe through. At midnight, I sat on the floor of my room and recorded a new song on my phone. I called it Survivor, because that's what I was, and I couldn't wait to show the world, or at least, whoever was willing to listen. Fabio texted me, saying he'd sent my recording to a team that worked on indie film soundtracks. "I don't want to get your hopes up, but they might want you for a project." I read that message 10 times, and smiled, because right there, alone in my room, with no crowd and no applause, I knew the girl who once shrank under a cruel laugh was growing, and no one was ever going to shrink what had already expanded inside me. She found the card in my backpack, the one from my first audition. I'd forgotten to take it out. When I got home from school, she was sitting in the living room holding it between her fingers like it was evidence of betrayal. "Want to tell me what this is?" Her voice was way too calm. Dangerous calm. Masked as curiosity. I tried to say it was just something from school, but she'd already done her research. She knew. "So you've been out singing and lying to me, is that it?" I swallowed hard. My silence answered for me. Then she exploded, like she always does when she realizes she's lost control. She screamed, called me ungrateful, irresponsible, delusional. Said I should be ashamed for wasting time on nonsense while she worked herself to death in that house. Told me I was just like my father, the one who walked out. She slammed the table, threw the card on the floor, and for a second I wanted to shrink again. Apologize. Say it was a mistake. But I didn't. For the first time, I didn't. I stood my ground. Shaken, sure, but standing. You laughed at me on stage, I said. My voice trembled, but it came out. You always laugh. You always tear down anything I feel. She laughed again. That's what she knows how to do. Because it's ridiculous, Letícia. You're not going anywhere with this. Do you hear me? Nowhere. I stepped closer. You want me to quit because you gave up on yourself. She clicked her tongue and turned away. You think you're better than me? No, I said. I just think I deserve a life that doesn't start with fear every morning. The room went still. For the first time, she had nothing to say. She told me I wasn't allowed to leave. Said if I stepped outside that door, I could forget I had a mother. That stung. But it didn't stop me. Because by then, I'd already figured something out. My mom was a cracked mirror. And I'd spent my whole life trying to see myself through her broken reflection. Now I wanted to see clearly. I grabbed my phone, called Duda, asked for help, told her I couldn't rehearse at home anymore. She got it right away. Want to crash at my place for a few days? She asked. I said, yes. I packed in silence. She followed me into the room. This time, she was crying. I just wanted what's best for you. No, Mom. You wanted what was easiest for you. She asked me to stay. I looked her in the eyes, for the first time without fear. You laughed when I needed support the most. And now you cry because I chose to live without asking permission. I walked out, heard her slam the door behind me, but I didn't look back. I was still shaking, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was courage, a kind of freedom that bleeds before it heals. At Duda's place, I slept on a mattress on the floor, surrounded by posters, plants, and instruments. It felt strange at first, but also safe. For the first time, I had space to exist without being judged. Duda lent me a laptop. Fabio sent new tracks. Said they wanted to feature my song in a short film. They loved your delivery, he wrote. I read it out loud, just for myself, and I smiled. My voice, the one my mother tried to silence, was now part of something bigger. On Sunday, Duda took me to a small event. Independent singers, a humble crowd, plastic chairs, and string lights. She signed me up as a surprise guest. I nearly passed out, but I went. And when I sang, it felt like every note pulled a piece of my past out of me and handed it back, transformed. People clapped. Some filmed. And right there, under those dim lights and soft applause, I knew I didn't need anyone's permission to feel whole anymore. When we got back, Duda hugged me. You were powerful up there, she said. And I replied, it was the first time I really heard myself. Sometimes we need distance just to hear our own voice without all the noise from people who try to silence us. I didn't know what was coming next. But I knew one thing for sure. The girl who once begged for approval was now building her own stage. And no one was ever going to take it away from her. The studio was way bigger this time. Professional. Giant glass panels, padded walls, video cameras, people walking around with clipboards. And there it was, my name on a clipboard. Letícia Alves. I sang the same song 3 times, each in a different key, each with a different emotion. On the 3rd take, the director said, that's the one. The final cut was ready. It's closing the short film. The credits will roll with your voice. I froze inside. The girl who used to sing behind a gate was now the soundtrack of a film. And no one had to discover me. I showed up. That night, Duda took me to her place and played the video on her TV. Dim lights, popcorn in our laps, heart pounding. The short film was simple, beautiful. But when my voice came in, I cried. So did she. You have no idea what just happened, do you? She said. I smiled, still not fully getting it. She explained this was just the beginning. That producers and songwriters would see it, and that some had already asked for my name. My name. The one my mother used to say no one would ever remember. Now it was in the credits of a film. On Monday, I got a message from an account labeled Letícia with a profile picture that froze my blood. My mother. The message was short. I saw you in the video. It was beautiful. That was it. No apology. No real acknowledgement. But also no insults. Just a sign. I stared at the screen for a long time. I could have ignored it. Could have replied with anger. But I just typed, "Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness. It was freedom. To respond without needing her approval. Because I wasn't that girl begging to be seen anymore. The following week, Duda took me to a closed event with indie artists. I got on stage without a script. I just sang. And at the end, a woman approached me. "Do you have more songs like that? I've got a notebook full of them." She asked to see it. She was a soundtrack producer for TV shows. Said she wanted to talk about a project. I almost laughed from nerves. Because it still stung to remember that not too long ago, everything I created had to be hidden. And now, the world was starting to want to hear it. And more importantly, I wanted to be heard. I decided to visit my mother the following week. No warning. She opened the door and looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. I was different. Not in my face, but in my posture. In my eyes. We sat in the kitchen. Neither of us knew how to start. So I just said it. "I forgive you. But I'm not going back to that silence." She lowered her eyes. "You're getting known now. It's not about fame, Mom. It's about finally feeling alive." She nodded, stirring her coffee. "The house feels empty without you. But I'm finally full of myself." More invitations started to come in over the next few days. Small ones, but real. People asking me to write, to sing hooks, to share the stage. And every time my voice came out of me, I felt like I was reclaiming every part one had once buried. I didn't forget what I lived through. I didn't erase the scars. They're still here, healing. But now, every pain became a note. Every tear became a verse. And every laugh that once tried to silence me turned into fuel. If this story meant something to you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.